Hello, welcome to Useful Idiots. I'm Katie Halper.
And I'm Aaron Maté, and this is Monday Morning, where we watch the Sunday morning news show so that you do not have to.
Yeah.
And again, you are welcome. Man, oh man.
Man.
Much drivel to get through today, but some really fun stuff. We have some special treats. We're going to be visited by Hollywood royalty today, who someone with a lot to say about the possibility of World War III and why you shouldn't be worried about it.
Right.
And
you should be World War III curious, actually.
Yeah, really, you should entertain World War III.
Yeah.
If you really care about the
Embrace
world.
it,
According to this Hollywood celebrity. So it's a good one. And as always, please like the stream to help us beat algorithmic suppression.
Yeah.
And also, please join us at usefulidiots.substack.com, or for short, usefulidiots.podcast.com, our brand new URL.
Yeah, pretty exciting. And there's some proud patriots in the chat. Someone said they liked before watching, and we salute you, because that's the kind of useful loyalty that we really appreciate.
We certainly do. And if you're on Locals too, we're also on Locals at usefulidiots.locals.com.
Yeah.
So many ways to support the show. We really appreciate
and you get, and not only do you get to support the show and literally make it happen, because we couldn't do the show without that, but you get really great bonus content, including extended interviews and your Thursday Throwdown, which is your midweek dose of media madness, which is kind of like this, but for midweek and not live, obviously, a little behind the scenes exclusive. Yeah.
I mean, that would be a whole new level of bonus if we were to give people behind the scenes access to Useful Idiots.
The BTS, yeah.
Oh, the arguments, the drama of producing the show behind the scenes.
Yeah, you've no idea. Yeah.
There'll be a documentary one day. It's gonna be big.
Yeah. Really good.
Okay, well, it's a new era for Monday Morning because the Chuckster is no longer with us. Chuck Todd, if you missed last week, Chuck Todd has left Meet the Press. He stepped down.
Aaron, you should have really given a trigger warning with that.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Okay.
He's handed the baton to, what's her name? Kristen Welker, who I got to say, I mean, whatever else you want to say about her, she's not nearly as smug as Chuck Todd. It's kind of it's a letdown.
It is.
The smugness is just not there.
Where's the smug factor? Yeah.
Yeah. The smug factor is pretty much zero. Anyway, but here she is kicking off her new era and our new era of Monday Morning.
Press with Kristen Welker. This is Meet the Press with Kristen Welker.
Good Sunday morning. We begin this new chapter of Meet the Press after yet another extraordinary week in American politics. House Republicans announced an impeachment inquiry into President Biden. The president's son, Hunter, was indicted on gun charges, and House conservatives doubled down on their threat to shut down the government. Meanwhile, people close to President Biden are increasingly worried his son's legal troubles could strain the president's focus on what's expected to be a razor-close election. It was against that backdrop that I sat down with the former president at his golf club in Penn.
Look how weird and hulking that angle is.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're like, it looks like they're like both falling into the camera. Do you know what I mean? There's something, I don't know why they did it that way. Maybe because there's a big height difference, but it's like, we call that, I think, Dutch angle. I remember from film class. So like underneath.
Again, according to the form he filled out himself, President Trump is a lean 215.
Oh, right. So it's true.
It must be the camera making him look different because he couldn't possibly.
Oh, no, maybe that's that's actually, I think you just hit it. Aaron. When you film from above, right? Is that above? It's more thinning. It's more flattering.
I see. Okay. Yeah. All right.
There you go.
It could even be a drone shot. Who knows what they're using?
Yeah, it could be a drone. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a pretty big get. Like Welker did well for her first show. So I wouldn't be surprised if they include some drones.
Yeah.
To pull out all the stops.
I mean, there's a whole contingent of her audience who loathes the idea of even speaking to Donald Trump, even though he's the former president and a leading candidate for the Republican Party. So this does show some guts in some ways, and we're gonna see how it goes.
Bedminster, New Jersey, his first network interview since leaving office. We have extended this same invitation to President Biden. Mr. Trump has been criminally indicted 4 times and faces 91 felony counts, but continues to hold a commanding lead as the Republican frontrunner. I began by asking Mr. Trump what a second term would look like if he's reelected.
So because I talk about Chuck Todd's outfit sometimes, I feel like it's fair. I just want to say, all right, I want to
Kristen
say
Welker.
that
Good Sunday
I like the suit. It's a good choice for a first suit. It's like festive without being unserious. Wait, why is this? It's glitchy. It's like the powers that be don't want me to highlight her suit. Anyway, it's a good you know what? I call that color champagne.
Okay, yeah.
And it's satin and shimmery. Anyway, I just like that. That's my favorite thing about her debut so far. And you can't call me sexist again because I comment on his ties and his jackets.
Again, it's a disappointing era for us because she's less smug than Chuck Todd, way less smug, not even close. And you can't even make fun of her attire.
Right.
You know, this is a nightmare for
This
East
is really a nightmare.
I don't know how we're going to adapt.
How are we going to get through this?
But
With
this
your
is how it
guys'
works.
help, yeah.
This is how it works in the news business. You know, you're faced with a challenge, and you rise to it, or you fall to the wayside. So this is our moment. This is our moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Without the Chuckster. Okay, well, let's hear some more from this interview between Kristen Welker and Donald J. Trump. This one sounds like some therapy talk, and I love this clip. So let's hear this question.
I want to talk. Mr. President, I want to talk
Kristen,
about
wait a minute. Wait. Could I say one thing? Look at all the lies he's told over the last couple of weeks. He said he was at the World Trade Center, and he wasn't. He said he flew airplanes, right?
Okay, obviously he's talking about Joe Biden here. And to be fair, we probably didn't cover this, but Joe Biden, I think we missed it, but I covered on the Katie Halper show. Joe Biden did say he was at 9/11 the day after when he was in Washington, D.C.
You mean Joe Biden lied? No.
I know. About
only Donald Trump does
9/11.
Yeah. Only Donald Trump does that.
Yeah.
No.
And this actually was covered by CNN, which is kind of crazy because they usually don't address that stuff. When, you know, remember like Washington Post like got rid of their fact checking section after their like presidential fact checking after Trump left office because Biden is so honest they didn't have to. To be fair, CNN did a little segment on this because I think that it's just like if you lie around 9/11, like remember with Joseph McCarthy, the reason that he finally was justifiably repudiated was because he went after the army. That was his mistake. So I feel like Joe Biden went after 9/11, tainted 9/11, and you can't do that.
I don't think that's why. I think it's because now there's a part of the establishment that doesn't want Joe Biden to run because.
Oh, really? You think they're trying to get
so out
him
to lunch? Yeah, you know,
and they want Gavin Newsom or something?
Well,
like who do they want?
Last week,
obviously we know who they want. That guy whose name no one knows and whose name I can't remember.
Dean Phillips.
Dean Phillips. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, last week there was a column in the Washington Post by David Ignatius, who's basically a spokesperson for the CIA,
right?
Very close with U.S. intelligence, and he said Biden should not run, and that to me was a signal that some powerful people in Washington don't want Biden to run. So I think in that environment, it's easier to criticize.
Lies, yeah. So you mean my really good transhistorical analysis reaching back to McCarthy wasn't it? All right, fine.
I mean, maybe. Who knows? I mean, but I'm saying is
yeah. I hear what you're saying.
It is becoming increasingly okay to call on Biden not to run. So,
which is why, given that they're obviously the media is obviously now really entertaining, interviewing people like Cornel West, Marianne Williamson, and RFK Jr. Oh, they're not actually doing that, even though they're actually in the race, as opposed to Dean Phillips. Anyway.
Yeah, well, unless you're trying to prop up the Democratic establishment, you don't count. You don't matter.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay. let's get back to this session with Donald Trump.
Didn't. He said he drove trucks, and he didn't. Everything he says is like a lie. It's terrible.
Mr. President,
even his handicap in golf, he said he's a 6. He's not a 6.
I want to stay focused on you.
Golf reference.
For the purposes of this interview, okay? Because it's important on you.
Okay.
For the purposes of this interview, okay? Because it's important that we hear from you about all of this.
Well, I'd like you to, but you keep interrupting me.
Tell me, Mr. President, tell me what you see when you look at your mugshot.
I see somebody.
I'm looking at the mugshot in the mirror. Sorry, I couldn't help it.
I see somebody that loves this country in me, that loves this country. I see tremendous unfairness. I think very few people would have been able to handle what I handled.
By the way, do you think your former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, is still loyal to you? He just pleaded not guilty in the Georgia
Well, I hope
case.
he's loyal to me. I mean,
do you worry about him flipping?
Wrong.
Do you worry
I didn't
about
do
him?
anything wrong.
Okay.
Didn't that sound kind of like a therapy session?
Yeah.
Like Donald Trump's complaining about some guy he really doesn't like, it really bothers him. Like he what about him? He lies all the time. He lied about this. And Kristen Welker's like, Donald, I want to talk about you.
Right. Let's
How did
bring
you
this back
feel?
to you. Yeah.
What do you see when you look at the mugshot of yourself? Like, what do you see there? What comes to mind? You know, and her voice is kind of soothing, so it's like
it is.
It really could have been a therapy session. That was impressive right there. I like it. Let's
Yeah,
have more of that in media.
I like it
How do
a
you
lot.
feel about this picture of your of your criminal self?
Right. When you see your mugshot, what do you feel? I don't want to hear about your enemies. I don't want to hear about your frenemy, who you're mad about, always splitting the check evenly, regardless of what you order. I don't want to hear about what your father did to you when you were a child, how he neglected you. I want to talk about you. Yeah.
Well, I'd love to see more of these sessions between these two. Let's make it a weekly thing, like good therapy is. Okay, let's go to Trump speaking about the issue of abortion. Here he makes an extraordinary claim, and then he's going to get fact checked. But the fact check is lacking something, I think. So here it is.
Democrats don't want to be radical on the issue. Most of them, some do. They don't want to be radical on the issue. They don't want to kill a baby in the 7th month or the 9th month or after birth. And they're allowed to do that, and you can't do that.
One important fact check we do want to highlight: abortions later in pregnancy are exceedingly rare. When we come back, we turn to foreign policy, the war in Ukraine, and whether Mr.
Okay, so if you caught that, during that clip, he talked about Democrats favoring abortions after birth. Okay,
yeah,
which I've never heard of before. What the hell is he talking about? Like, he's talking about, is he talking about killing
infanticide?
Infanticide. So she fact checks him after that, but she doesn't fact check that. She just fact checks his claim about late term abortions. But what about his claim that Democrats favor abortions after birth? Like, they let that one slide.
She kind of buried the lead there.
Yeah, it's like, how are you gonna let that slide? Am I missing something? So
also, it would have been cool if she had said that during the interview.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I know. But I mean, maybe sometimes you're interviewing someone, you miss what they're saying.
Right. Or maybe she was just blown away. I could imagine just being like, yeah.
But this one, they did the fact check, and I guess they're like, yeah, the thing about killing babies, let's let that one go.
We don't have the evidence about that. We don't have the data to cite. We don't know how rare it is.
Yeah. I mean, if you're gonna do a fact check, I mean, let's focus on the most egregious lie.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Which is the post-birth abortion.
Yeah.
The after-birth abortion.
I mean, it's
As Jabril points out, that's not abortion. Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
it is
murder.
Not abortion. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. More from this interview. Here is Trump talking about the proxy war in Ukraine.
Given that President Putin has bombed maternity wards, 20,000 kids kidnapped from Ukraine by Russia, mass graves.
Oh, terrible.
Do you welcome his support, his all but endorsement?
Look, I had a very good relationship with him.
Can I say this question is based on a false premise?
Yeah.
Putin spoke last week, and he pointed out that, Trump talked about cooperating with Russia, and that would be a good thing, right? And so the U.S. media seized on that. What they omitted is what Trump also said, which is that, which is what Putin also said, which is that it doesn't matter who is elected, that the policy will stay the same. So whether Trump wins or not, he said it doesn't matter because the U.S. hostility to Russia will remain the same, which I think is accurate. But the media ignored that part, and they just focused on Putin mentioning that Trump talked about cooperation between the two countries, and that would be a good thing. And I think he maybe even criticized the various criminal cases against Trump, but he didn't endorse him at all. He said if he wins, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't make a difference to the policy. Things will stay the same. So the premise is completely false there.
Yeah, except Aaron, you forgot that according to all these, lib protesters, the big scandal about Trump is that Putin is his boyfriend.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
And Trump is going to now point out something inconvenient about that narrative, which of course liberals would completely ignore because they're incentivized to believe that he really is being blackmailed by Putin and in bed together, all that stuff.
And yet nobody was tougher on Russia than me. I stopped Nord Stream 2. You never heard of Nord Stream 2. That was the pipeline until I got involved. I said Nord Stream 2, people that were sophisticated, military people and political people never heard of Nord Stream 2. I had it ended. The pipeline was dead. Biden came in and he approved it. There was nobody tougher than me with Russia. And yet I got along with Putin. Let me tell you, I got along with him really well. And that's a good thing, not a bad thing. He's got 1,700 nuclear missiles, and so do we. But look, that's a good thing. Getting along is okay, but
And this captures the, quandary that Trump poses for liberals. Like when he talks sometimes, he says, get along with Russia is a good thing. And when he says that, people's brains explode. They think that means he's an asset of Russia, is being blackmailed by them. Then they ignore the part where he points out accurately that he was tougher, in his words, on Russia than anybody else, which is true. He
tore up
vital arms control treaties, as he bragged about. He did almost kill the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and
he funded Ukraine.
He sent weapons to Ukraine that Obama would not send because Obama didn't want to further escalate the proxy war that he basically started with a 2014 coup. But liberals can't hear that part about Trump's actual policies because they really want to believe that he's doing Vladimir Putin's bidding. So
because they're boyfriends.
And so we have this thing where, we have this guy talking about getting along with Russia, which I think is a good thing because, as he points out, both countries have nuclear weapons pointed at each other. But then he brags about how tough he is on them. And liberals, rather than saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't actually be so tough on this nuclear armed power, we should get along, instead pretend that actually he's doing Vladimir Putin's bidding. So it really is the worst of both worlds.
Yeah.
Worlds. Okay. Let's move on. Okay, one more clip from Trump. This one's great. He is asked about what would happen if China invaded Taiwan. And remember what Joe Biden said. Joe Biden didn't hesitate to say that if China invades Taiwan, the U.S. would go to war with China. And so Trump is asked the same question.
Deal. If you were to cut a deal between President Putin and President Zelensky, do you run the risk of emboldening China to invade Taiwan?
No, not at all. Because China, he's another one I got along to until we had the China virus come in. Once COVID came in, once it was like, I made a great trade deal with China, one of the greatest deals ever made for the farmers and for the manufacturers. $50 billion a year is a great deal. I don't even talk about it because once COVID came in, it was like, I didn't want to talk about anything. I was a much different person. What happened to this world, not our country, the whole world, what happened with COVID. And it just shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened. What happened, what China did to the world was so bad. But I had a great relationship with President Xi, really great relationship. And he was going to stop fentanyl from coming in. He was going to do he was going to criminalize it if you made it. In China, they have a death penalty for drug deals. He was going to make that with fentanyl dealers too. But then the election didn't work out, and he never had to do that.
I know you've been asked this, but very quickly, if China were to invade Taiwan, have you made a determination, again, since voters are about to go to the polls, would you send the U.S. military into Taiwan if President Xi were to invade? President Biden says he would.
I won't say, because if I said, I'm giving away, only stupid people are going to give that answer. I heard the other day, DeSanctimonious said something about he was going to do this or he was going to do that. I say, well, why is he saying the strategy? You can't say that. So when you ask me that question, I would never say that because you give away all your options.
But you don't take it off the table.
I don't take anything off the table, no.
And again, that's how you can be adversarial in U.S. media, is by pressing a political leader to be confrontational. And it's interesting.
And
that's
belligerent.
Belligerent, yeah. And so the best answer we can get is someone like Trump who won't say what they would do. No one would dare to say, no, actually, I wouldn't go to war with China. I wouldn't have a world war over a place, thousands of miles away, a place that's none of our business.
That's not invading any countries or threatening us.
Yeah, we can't possibly get to that level. But so the best we can do is Trump saying, I'm not going to tell you. Whereas Biden's like, yes, I would. Yes, I would. Yes, we'd have war. Yes.
Well, Welker was one of the people who was in the room. Remember when Ryan Grimm did that mashup of all the journalists who were pressuring the administration to do a no-fly zone or do more? Mm-hmm. And I don't remember if it was a Pentagon spokesperson or it may have been Jean-Pierre, but one of those moments where you actually had the media being more war-friendly, more belligerent than the person being questioned. And she was one of those people clamoring for a no-fly zone. So, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, shifting gears a little bit, let's go to a more inspiring speaker than Donald Trump. And let's hear what the president of the UAW has to say. Before we hear from him, though, here's a little update about the latest with the United Auto Workers and their strikes, which is very exciting.
Bottom line. Automakers in their bottom line. For a third day, nearly 13,000 United Auto Workers have pumped the brakes at plants in Michigan, Ohio, and Missouri, striking after their union contract with the nation's big three automakers ran out.
I'm here for the long haul. Yep. Long haul. If I have to be out here, rain, sleet, snow, thunderstorm, tornado, striking, I'm here.
I don't think they're hunting for the CEOs.
And they're getting the backing of high-profile Democrats. Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman joined the picket line, while Vermont's Bernie Sanders.
By the way, doesn't it look like John Fetterman is in disguise with the mustache? You just need him with the Groucho Marx glasses and mustache. Anyway, but that is Fetterman.
The picket line, while Vermont's Bernie Sanders headlined a huge rally just feet from the Detroit Auto Show.
It is totally reasonable
for
auto workers to finally receive a fair share of the record-breaking profits that their labor has produced.
About an hour south of Detroit, there are 10,000 auto workers here in Toledo. More than half of them are now on strike at this Jeep plant. But that likely has more to do with what's built here. The popular and lucrative Jeep Wrangler and Jeep Gladiator, vehicles that could soon be in short supply on dealer lots.
Most of us can't even afford the vehicles that we're building.
Robert Vasquez has worked at the Toledo plant since 1997.
We're in it to the end. We want our fair share.
The union is seeking a 36% raise with cost of living increases to counter inflation, the unwinding of concessions made during the Great Recession, and worker protection as the companies transition to less labor-intensive electric vehicles. They also want a 4-day work week and a return of pensions. Both are non-starters for the automakers. The big three are offering about a 20% raise.
It's a record from a gross wage increase perspective in our 115-year history.
Can GM be successful if you met all their demands?
No. The life of the contract, the initial demands were over.
Okay, what a disgusting cuck question. Can he be successful if you met all their demands? Was he paid to ask her that question? He's basically just acting as a CEO spokesperson. He should get paid by GM for that question. It's just a talking point by management and by these CEOs that they can't afford to meet these demands, which of course is not true.
If you met all their demands?
No. The life of the contract, the initial demands were over $100 billion. We still have a ways to go.
GM now expects to idle a plant in Kansas, and Ford announced 6.
They're a struggling mom and pop shop.
Exactly.
They can't, they're just trying to make it through the end of each day, pinching pennies wherever they can. So these greedy workers would, of course, implode the company, because of course that's what workers do, is they make demands that would guarantee the company wouldn't exist anymore. They couldn't work. I mean, that's
They're masochists.
They just want to burn it all down. They don't want to actually work anymore. They're just trying to ruin the company.
I mean, imagine if that journalist had responded by mentioning the record-breaking profits that GM is raking in. Imagine if he actually read like the CEO salaries.
And I think she makes over 10 million, over 20 million or something. She makes a lot of money. So you could ask a question along those lines. Like, do you need to make tens of millions or millions of dollars as your salary? You and other executives? I don't know. But, before that, I had to kind of pinch myself because I realized, oh my God, I'm watching some actual coverage on the Sunday morning news show of a worker struggle and even letting the workers speak for themselves. You don't get that really ever. This might be the first time I can remember of like a few years of doing Monday morning that there might even be a segment like that on worker struggles. And if it happens, it's not very often. So, it's kind of once in a blue moon.
Well, Aaron, I think the important thing about this story is that we don't actually do this usually at Useful Idiots, but since this is an unprecedented moment where we're seeing a labor story, I think it's an unprecedented moment, an opportunity for us to raise awareness of how much that CEO, Mary Barra, who we just heard from, is struggling because she only makes $29 million.
There we go.
So if we could ask you guys, if you super chat this show, we will give all of those super chat donations to her in the hopes that she can negotiate, because we know that with 29 million, it's really hard to make ends meet. But luckily, as we got more adversarial journalism, because the other way you're allowed to be adversarial, you can either be call for war, red bait China, but you can also put certain people on the spot like this, which we're going to see right now. Let's take a look at Margaret Sullivan talking to Face the Nation, making Sean Fain make Face the Nation. He's the UAW president.
Pro-union. President Biden says he's the most pro-union president in American history, but you haven't endorsed him. What is it going to take for you to do that?
Look how angry and annoyed she is.
Why haven't you endorsed Joe Biden?
Yeah.
You ungrateful peasant.
You ungrateful peasant. Why don't you accept his talking point about himself that he's the most pro-union? What is it going to take for you to sit down, shut up, and endorse?
Our endorsements are going to be earned. We've been very clear about that, no matter what politician it is.
How does he earn it?
We expect action. We expect action, not words. And this fight we're in right now, I mean, obviously, people are talking about them trying to interject themselves into our negotiations. This negotiating, our negotiators are fighting hard. Our leadership's fighting hard. It's going to be one at the negotiating table with our negotiating teams, with our members manning the picket lines and our allies out there. Who the president is now, who the former president was, or the presidents before them, isn't going to win this fight. This fight is all about one thing. It's about workers winning their fair share of economic justice instead of being left behind as they have been in the last decades.
So she's pissed off. How is he going to earn it? She can't believe that it's not already guaranteed.
Yeah, I mean, he says he's the most pro-union president ever. So isn't that enough?
Yeah.
That's what he says.
Yeah, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But so he's handing the election to Trump. Yet another person.
Well, luckily, someone who does not have to earn anyone's support because we automatically worship him and do whatever he says is a guy named Volodymyr Zelensky. He's the president of Ukraine. He'll be visiting the U.S. this week, going before Congress to ask for tens of billions of dollars in additional funding for the proxy war, because why not? And Congressmember Mike Turner, he's a Republican. He's the head of the House Intelligence Committee. He was on Face the Nation to discuss.
Members. One of the issues for some members of your caucus is the continued support for Ukraine. And we know President Zelensky is going to be here this week. Can you meet with him and tell him he's going to get the $13 billion that the White House is asking for? Can you get your caucus to support it?
Well, the House certainly the Republican caucus overwhelmingly supports aid for Ukraine. There will be issues over what the administration has asked for and what Congress ultimately gives. Speaker McCarthy has made it clear that the White House should have come to us and worked on what the package was and not just sent it to Capitol Hill for dispensation. But at the same time,
but we're still going to approve it all anyway. And I believe the Biden administration packaged the new Ukraine proxy war money with funding for disaster relief for Hawaii, if I'm not mistaken, or at least that was the initial.
That's
move.
what Tammy Duckworth wanted to do, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's if you vote, if you're someone who doesn't want to fund the proxy war anymore, you can't express that without voting against disaster relief. Although maybe they've undone that now, but that was the initial move. But regardless, I'm very confident that despite Mike Turner's suggestion, there will be no changes at all, and Biden and Zelensky will get everything they ask for. Because if there's one thing that's bipartisan in this country, it's proxy wars.
Proxy wars, hating on China, and funding the military, the Pentagon. Yeah.
Zelensky's a great spokesperson. He really makes the case better than anyone that this is a fight for democracy and that Putin's goals are well beyond Ukraine, into Eastern Europe and into the Baltics. Having him.
I love it. Zelensky's he's a good spokesperson. That's his main role.
Yeah.
He's not actually a leader of a country that we claim to support. He's a spokesperson for us to provide tens of billions of dollars in gifts to the military-industrial complex and to prolong a proxy war against.
He's a good good Raytheon spokesman.
Yeah. But actually, is he a great spokesperson? Because he recently, last week, he basically threatened European countries. He said that he's like, you guys have been good to us so far, but keep in mind, there are a lot of Ukrainian refugees in your countries now. And if you don't support us, you're going to have a lot of people who are pretty angry, and we'll see where that leads. It basically was a threat. So it's the spokesperson, who's supposedly so wonderful, is actually threatening Europe with violence if they don't give him everything he asked for. Because, understandably, one of his complaints, this is a fair complaint from his point of view, is that rather than give Ukraine all the weapons that it's asked for, the U.S. has been overseeing this slow drip feed of saying we're not going to give Ukraine these weapons, and then a few months later reversing course and then approving it. And you can go on and on and on. This has happened with the F-16s, with the tanks, with ATACMS now. Apparently that's the latest weapon system going to Ukraine, these long-range missiles. And Zelensky has been saying, why don't you give this to us all at once? And the answer is because the U.S. doesn't care about defending Ukraine. It just wants to prolong the war. So every time there's a chance to prolong the war, that's when Biden comes in with a new weapon system, and they say, oh, the situation has changed, and now we can send this weapon system we previously had ruled out because it was deemed to be too escalatory. No, the reason is because there's a new chance to prolong the war and keep this going.
Him here is going to be very, very persuasive. The last time we had votes on the House floor on the issue of aid for Ukraine, nearly 300 members voted in affirmative out of 435. A majority of the Republicans voted in the affirmative, and I think that will continue.
It will definitely continue.
Yeah,
including all members of the squad and the Progressive Caucus. You can count on them to keep funding for this proxy war. And also, by the way, we're approaching the 1-year anniversary of when the Democratic progressives put out that letter asking the Biden administration politely for diplomacy with Russia to end the war, and then withdrew it after 24 hours. And so we're coming up on 1 year on 1 year on that.
So pathetic.
And I think they will mark that. I think the progressives will mark that anniversary by voting for more money to continue the war.
And as someone just pointed out in the comments, these people know that Ukraine isn't going to win. So they're just throwing people into cannons and guns, throwing people, turning people into cannon fodder. They're just sending people into a meat grinder, knowing that they're not going to win.
Well, Katie, thankfully, we have someone to counter that disinformation that you're spreading.
Yeah.
Because his name is Sean Penn. You might know him
Before we get there, though, Aaron, sorry, can I just do one thing before we get there?
Sure.
Now that we have this nice tease. Wilson, how are we at likes?
Katie, you're not going to quite like this. It's only 653, which is kind of weird because I think Kristen Welker tried really hard because she got Trump and she had those high drone shots. And for some reason, people maybe they forget. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, thanks for pointing that out. That's pathetic. Let's get that up to 800. And in the meantime, as people like, I'm just going to do a little self-promotion. let people know that, Aaron, I made a documentary, right, called Commie Camp.
Yeah.
So I'm putting the link in there. You can see it live, and I'll be doing a Q&A on Wednesday, October 4th at DCTV, which is a really cool place with a really, it's in New York City with a really cool theater. It's at 87 Lafayette Street. It's in a really cool firehouse. But
that firehouse is the former home of Democracy Now!
Don't tell now. People aren't going to come, Aaron.
Well, no, surely no. It's an amazing
know.
building. It's an amazing. If you haven't been there before, it's an amazing building.
Yeah.
And a real champion of documentary film. But Katie, what is Commie Camp about?
Commie Camp is about a summer camp that I went to, that my mom went to, that my uncle went to, that my grandmother went to and worked at. And it was founded in 1923, and it still exists. And the right wing loves to hate that camp. And it was almost shut down during the McCarthy era. And then Rush Limbaugh targeted it. And it's a really, so in this documentary, I go back to the summer camp to discover if these children are being indoctrinated as, Rush Limbaugh claims, and RIP. And and is it strictly Jewish? No, it's not. In fact, from the beginning, it was a rare interracial place. Given that it was the 20s, that was very rare. It was founded by secular Jewish Yiddish-speaking workers, but from the beginning, it was a very internationalist project, and it was the type of Jews who don't believe in a Jewish-only place, if that makes sense.
So the screening is October 4th?
Yeah, at 6:30 p.m. at DCTV. At 6:30 p.m. And people who went to that camp, by the way, include Chesa Boudin, who became the DA of San Francisco, Marissa Tomei, the actor, Rachel Mirapol, the grandchildren of the Rosenbergs who were killed, Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, Merritt Weaver, the actor Merritt Weaver, she's won 2 Emmys. So, and no, it's not Zionist. And DCTV is Downtown Community Television Center. That's why it's DC. It's not Washington, DC. Yeah.
Well, before you watch Katie's documentary, there's another documentary you have to watch. And it's by the actor-director Sean Penn.
Yeah. And how are we at likes? Oh, and Paul Robeson visited the camp. Sorry, Paul Robeson, the famous Black communist athlete, singer, actor. Yeah. Okay.
It took that entire time when we just hit 800. And Katie, is it true that the camp will shut down and all the children become orphans if people don't like this?
Somehow, yeah. I don't know how that works, but apparently, yeah.
Okay, but we made it.
Yeah, we made it.
Let's check out Sean Penn.
Yeah, great.
So Sean Penn has a new documentary. It's called Superpower, and it's all about the proxy war in Ukraine and how, in Sean Penn's view, we're not doing nearly enough to fuel this proxy war. Sean Penn wants a lot more. So here he is talking about it.
And is a co-director. Actor and director Sean Penn is the co-director of a new documentary called Superpower. It's about President Zelensky and the war in Ukraine. Zelensky agreed to meet with Penn in person for the first time on camera on the same day Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
Great that you are here. It's very important now, all this support. And I think your voice, the voice of the guys, I think Americans has to hear. So I think you see that we are just ordinary people who wants to live in our country. Yeah, and how are you here? It's so dangerous
to be here at this time in this country with you, with your countrymen. I mean, there's so much inspiration to be had here.
We spoke with Penn on Friday about his new film. In one of the clips, Andrei Yermak, one of the top advisors to President Zelensky, says to you, the U.S. position should be stronger. If the United States and Joe Biden doesn't do something now, essentially, he says America's over. That followed with a pretty robust financial investment by the United States, more than $50 billion, pledges of weapons. But from what I've heard you say, you think the United States isn't doing enough.
It is my absolute feeling that
My absolute feeling, my gut is telling me this.
The caution with which the United States has pledged support, which seemed, in my reading of the February 2022, was a like a lean on in the fear of nuclear conflict. Something I think all of us should look very carefully at and understand it.
Wait for it, though. So he's saying that the Biden administration's so-called caution in waging this proxy war in Ukraine against Russia, it was limited by the fear of nuclear conflict. And Sean Penn's going to tell us why that fear should not exist, why there's nothing to see here when it comes to the threat of nuclear war. Let's forget about it.
Of course, is possible, and that's to be concerning. The likelihood is extremely low. And as one of our witnesses in the film says, you know, are we going to let a gangster with nuclear weapons dictate the way we live? So I think that, and that the
Well, maybe, I don't know about dictate the way we live, but maybe it should be taken into account that someone has nuclear weapons.
But also, I mean, Putin's not dictating the way we live. Like, he's not telling anyone, like, hey, I have nukes, so you can't, I don't know, you can't have your secular Western lifestyle. Right. It should dictate how much we should fight them in a proxy war, I think. And including we should not get into a fight with them directly, because that would lead to a nuclear holocaust. And Sean Penn wants to ignore that concern. It's not about how we live, it's about how we fight a proxy war against them.
Right.
Which is different than living. And
yeah, we're all going to have to sing, like, it's like we're all going to have to sing the Pledge of Allegiance to Vladimir Putin or something.
Yeah.
Ukrainians won't let him do that.
In the documentary, you spoke.
So that's Sean Penn basically saying that the threat of nuclear war is overblown, and we shouldn't let that dictate how we fight. And by the way, when the presumption here is that Putin has threatened the West with nuclear war. All Putin has done is reiterated Russian doctrine, which is that if there's an existential threat to their country, they could resort to nuclear weapons. And certainly, if other people use nuclear weapons against them first, they will use them as well. That's Russian doctrine. The U.S. doctrine is actually different. The U.S. doctrine says we can use nuclear weapons first, even if we're not attacked first. Biden was talking about undoing that, but of course, that's a promise that he didn't keep. But so there's a lot there, and basically, Sean Penn is here to tell us that the fear about that is overblown.
Yeah, it's irrational.
And he doesn't get what I was talking about before, which is that what's called the Biden administration's caution in terms of like slowly giving weapons to Ukraine. It's not about caution. It's about making the war goes on for as long as possible. Right. That's what it's about. Because the aim again is because the aim, as Biden administration officials have said, is to weaken Russia. It's not to defend Ukraine or bring the war to a speedy end. It's to weaken Russia, to hand Russia a strategic defeat. So if that's your goal, then you're going to want to drag out the war for as long as possible. Okay, let's hear more from the sage, Sean Penn.
With our principles, with our Republicans and our Democrats, with our leadership, the citizenry too. While we were putting all those Ukrainian flags out, we should have demand decisiveness in this case, because at some point, caution becomes cowardice. But
I love that mantra. You hear that mantra, Katie? Caution is cowardice. So
CBC, caution becomes cowardice. CBC.
So maybe Sean Penn should explain his caution in not going to fight directly on the front lines. Like, he's making a documentary promoting fighting on the front lines, but he's not doing it himself. So how is he not the coward that he's accusing others of being?
And we know that he likes to show up in war zones, or disaster zones, right? Wasn't he in like Haiti with like a hole in his boat or something?
He ran a refugee camp or some sort of camp in Haiti after the earthquake. And at least back then, I mean, whatever you want to say about him, there was all sorts of weird allegations about what he was doing, but at least he wasn't there promoting a proxy war. He was actually there after a country was devastated by an earthquake and doing something to help. But this is now far different. Now he's using his star power to promote war.
He's great on the death penalty. I'll give him that. Dead Man Walking is an amazing film, which he was in, and Tim Robbins directed. Anyway, and Susan Sarandon was in too.
Great films. He's made some great films.
Great film, yeah.
Mystic River, so many hits.
Great.
But
he was amazing as Harvey Milk in Milk. He became Harvey.
Also
Milk.
a great role.
Yeah.
When it gets into military strategy, I don't know. I have different feelings, but yeah.
Maybe he could play Zelensky. Maybe this is also he can play Zelensky.
That'd be a great role for him.
They called the movie, you know how Harvey Milk was Milk. This could be called Zell.
All right. Well, thank you, military strategist Sean Penn, and we'll keep that in mind that caution becomes cowardice. And
CBC.
We'll check back in with you maybe if we're fighting Russia directly in a nuclear war. We'll see. We'll see if you still believe that.
Maybe you could lead the troops.
Who knows?
Be commander.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? All right. Let's move on. Jamie Raskin. What is he talking about?
All right. So in order to understand this next clip, which is Jamie Raskin on Jen Psaki's show, we're going to have to go back a couple of days to hear Jamie Raskin being interviewed by Jake Tapper. And this is it's kind of meta because in this clip, you're going to see Jake Tapper refer to Nancy Pelosi being interviewed about Kamala Harris. So let's take a look.
Do through appeasement.
I want to play this clip from Anderson Cooper's show last night where he interviewed former Speaker Pelosi. Take a listen.
Is Vice President Kamala Harris the best running mate for this president?
He thinks so, and that's what matters.
Do you think she is the best running mate, though?
She's the vice president of the United States. So when people say to me, well, why isn't she doing this or that? I said, because she's the vice president. That's the job description. You don't do that much.
Pause.
Not exactly a ringing endorsement. Do you think?
Sorry, we can't pause this. So that's an interesting non-endorsement. He thinks she's the best vice president, and when she's criticized, don't worry, she's just a vice president. So the vice presidents don't do anything. That's what Pelosi says. So now let's go to Jake Tapper talking to Jamie Raskin about said comments.
Think Vice President Kamala Harris is the best?
The job description. You don't do that much.
Not exactly a ringing endorsement. Do you think Vice President Kamala Harris is the best running mate for President Biden? And what do you make of Speaker Pelosi's answer there?
I mean, there didn't seem to be anything wrong with that answer. Obviously, President Biden, Vice President Harris, Speaker Pelosi, for that matter, all of us have been laboring under just a deluge of propaganda, disinformation, and criticism by the MAGA right. This is a rule or ruin faction, which takes the position that if they're not going to be able to control the direction of government, they are going to throw grease in the gears to try to shut everything down. And what we're all dealing with right now is this impending September 30th deadline, because the MAGA right wants to shut down the government.
You are doing what Speaker Pelosi did, which is not answering the question. Do you think Kamala Harris is the best running mate for President Biden?
Is it? Well, obviously, she gave the right answer. That's President Biden's choice. And I think she's an excellent running mate for President Biden. I don't know what more needs to be said about that. Obviously, people are still trying to, throw presidential politics into turmoil. But President Biden and Vice President Harris are running on an excellent record. $1.2 trillion investment in infrastructure, the Inflation Reduction Act, record investment in climate action. We've reduced prescription drug prices. And so there's a very strong
really
policy
won't
record
answer the question,
to run on there. And I want to resist the tendency to try to trivialize all politics by making it just about personalities.
It's not no one's making it about personalities. I mean, it's just a simple question. Do you think Kamala Harris is the best running mate for President Biden? You've said she's excellent. That's farther than Speaker Pelosi went. But do you think she's the best? I'm not trying to throw anything into turmoil. I actually think it's a pretty simple question. Do you think Kamala Harris is the best running mate for President Biden? Yes or no?
I mean, I don't know what else I can say other than
you could say yes or no.
Yes. An excellent running mate
or no.
And an excellent vice president. I don't know whether President Biden has named his running mate. We're going to a convention next summer. It's a year away from now. And we're going to go through that process. So,
I mean, you say, I don't know why you have to say, the answer is you could say yes. You could say yes. I think Kamala Harris is the best vice president and the best running mate for President Biden. That's the answer you could be giving right now. Yes, she is.
So I've not seen any public opinion polling. You might be a stronger vice presidential running mate than her or me or anybody else. I don't know
talking about?
Who else, if you're talking about the polling, but I will tell you as a matter of substance and public policy,
I think that's good.
She'd be an excellent choice.
Wow.
And,
I think what Jamie Raskin's saying is he's not God. He doesn't know who the best candidate is. Maybe there's someone better. I appreciate his open-mindedness to the universe. Who else could come along who would be better? But you know what? I got to say, there's something unfair about this line of questioning. I don't recall this question being asked when Joe Biden was Barack Obama's vice president.
Sure.
I don't recall that, even though Joe Biden was really gaffe prone. He would blurt out things he really was not supposed to say. Recall before that he even became the vice president, he had this really infamous moment on the campaign trail where he basically said that Obama was like a good black candidate because he's clean and articulate.
Right.
Yeah. So Biden had all sorts of gaffes like that. I don't recall anyone saying, like, is Joe Biden the best vice president for Obama? And again, I'm sorry to be defending Kamala Harris here. It's an awkward position for me. But also, when you compare, Biden under Obama was given actual tasks and portfolios. Right. He basically was given the task of running Ukraine after the U.S. backed a coup there. Kamala hasn't gotten anything. So she's been put in a tough position. So in that context, it's easy to say, like, what has she done and is she the best? They haven't given her anything to do. So I actually sympathize with
Wow.
her.
Not only are you defending Kamala, you're defending Jamie Raskin.
I appreciate Jamie's open-mindedness to who knows who out there is better. Who's he to say?
I mean, yeah, but fine. You could say it's an unfair treatment of Kamala versus Biden, but he's really tap dancing around that question. It's like unbelievable how he won't say yes or no. Yeah.
Well, obviously,
they're obviously leaving room for her not being the VP.
Sure. Obviously, people find Kamala annoying.
Yeah.
That's no secret. And they don't think she's the best candidate. But, hey, like, I don't know. Who's better than her?
Yeah. Someone in the comments said, are you kidding? Millions of people asked if Palin was a good running mate. Yeah, but that doesn't invalidate what Aaron was saying, which is that people didn't ask that about Biden.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about Sarah Palin. I was talking about Joe Biden.
Right.
And that's who we're discussing here. Joe Biden is now the president. He was the vice president before. And and again, you have to point out, in the case of Sarah Palin is a woman.
Right.
And so was Kamala Harris. And so
Sarah Palin was a pretty entertainingly unqualified candidate.
Yeah, I mean, that was a hilarious choice, and it made
funny.
that campaign a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so Jamie Raskin returned.
Yeah, because he obviously the powers that be, and the nice thing about when you have this revolving door from Biden spokesperson to show host is that you get to do damage control for the Biden administration. Kamala Harris, your former boss, Biden, your former boss. And so obviously strings were pulled, and Jen Psaki had Jamie Raskin on her show to do some damage control.
Okay, because you were Congressman, I wanted to ask you, because you were recently asked about Kamala Harris being on the ticket as the vice president. You've been such a supporter of the Biden-Harris agenda and presidency and vice presidency. Are you confident in the ticket, and how do you feel about the vice president remaining on the ticket?
This was clearly like there were emails back and forth, I'm sure. Psaki was like, look, we're going to ask you this question in a way so you don't have to say she's the best running mate, but it's going to come off like you're really endorsing them. I'll even embed it into my question. I'm going to remind people how supportive you are of them. Okay.
Great. I feel excellent about that, and there should be no confusion about it. I think someone was trying to get me to pick a fight with my friend Nancy Pelosi, which...
Whoa, name names. Just say Jake Tapper. You coward. You should challenge Jake Tapper to a battle. Say Jake Tapper was trying to get me to pick a fight with my friend Nancy Pelosi.
Call him out, Jamie.
I'm not going to do.
Yeah, call him out, Jamie. I like this now. Now he's like reframing this as him refusing to fight with his friend Nancy Pelosi.
My friend Nancy Pelosi, which I'm not going to do. We're all behind the Biden-Harris administration, which has delivered spectacular, remarkable victories in a $1.2 trillion in infrastructure of America, in the Inflation Reduction Act, in dramatic reductions in healthcare costs for the American people, in the Medicare program, in real climate change advocacy and defense against the nightmare of climate change. So we've been making tremendous progress under Biden-Harris, and we're all for the ticket. And, you know, I know, again, there seems to be an effort to say, well, if there's chaos on the Republican side, there's got to be chaos on the Democratic side. There's not. And I think that Biden and Harris have done a remarkable job against all the political odds as they face a rule or ruin faction within the Republican Party, which arrived at work this last week with just 3 goals. 1, to shut down the government of the United States. 2, to impeach the president of the United States. And 3, to overthrow the speaker of the United States. So
Congressman,
it's like Alfred Pennyworth said in Batman, some men just like to burn everything down.
Congressman, thank you on behalf of the White House, who she still basically works for. Thank you for that damage control.
Yeah.
And Joe will call you later to pat you on the head. It's so funny that the former White House spokesperson now hosts a news show, and we're supposed to think that this is normal and not state TV. But yeah, anyway, I'm glad to clear that up.
Yeah, I know. So I want Jake Tapper now to have Jen Psaki on to question her. I want some Raskin on Pelosi hate, but apparently we're never going to get that.
Okay, remember the spy balloon, the Chinese spy balloon that elicited?
I still have nightmares about it.
You still have nightmares
I jump under my bed every couple days.
Well, this clip might help. So if you recall, the Chinese spy balloon elicited this nationwide freakout. People were calling it an act of war. Antony Blinken canceled a visit to China over this. And it turned out, as we called on this show, we were covering it in real time. And while everyone was saying this is an act of war, we have to respond, we were saying, actually, what probably happened here, this was a weather balloon. It was blown off course by bad weather. And it ended up flying over the U.S. And here now is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, who's the nation's top military officer, who is going to say that exact same thing, that it turns out that the spy balloon from China wasn't actually spying at all. He was speaking to CBS News.
After the Navy raised the wreckage from the bottom, technical experts discovered the sensors had never been activated while over the continental United States. By then, the damage to U.S.-China relations had been...
By the way, what's that thing on his forehead? On Joseph's forehead?
It looks like a blotch, but it's really just the logo for the show.
I know.
Yeah, but yeah.
This silly balloon that was carrying 2 freight cars worth of spying equipment was flying over the United States, and it got shot down, and everything changed in terms of talking to one another.
So bottom line, it was a spy balloon, but it wasn't spying.
I would say it was a spy balloon that we know with high degree of certainty got no intelligence and didn't transmit any intelligence back to China.
So the spy balloon wasn't actually spying. And that's a great example, really simple one, of how easy it is to manufacture a scare over a foreign enemy and then way after the fact admit, oh yeah, actually, there was absolutely nothing to see here at all. The spy balloon was not actually spying.
So ridiculous. Wow. Well, guys, perfect timing. We reached 11 a.m. This has been a great show. I want to invite people. Wilson, how many subs do we have to this on YouTube?
I believe it's something like, let me check real quick. Oh. Whoa, that was a lot more than I was going to guess. 85.8 thousand subscribers.
All right, guys, let's get to 100K. It may not happen this week, but I think we can get there. Everyone who watches the show, you may not even know because we don't push this too much. We push the likes, which is important. If you're not already a subscriber, hit subscribe and then hit the bell because that also helps elevate the show. And we want to be beating Pod Save America. We want to get more subs than all these Sunday morning news shows, and we deserve it. So do it. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming in, coming to the show. Get tickets to my documentary if you can, if you're in the New York, in the tri-state area. And I think you shouldn't click subscribe twice because that undoes it. Just like you shouldn't click like twice because that undoes it. But look, Mr. Wonderful says this, and I couldn't speak better than him. Yes, please subscribe. The show deserves it. I agree. Jabril gives the show 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. Is that 6? Yeah, 6 hearts. That's better than 2 thumbs up or 5 stars. 6 hearts. We will see you when the show comes out. If you're a Substack or local subscriber, that means that you come out, you see us on Thursday. And if not, you'll see us on Friday. Bye, everyone.
Bye.